Close your eyes for a moment and take yourself back thousands of years. It's a cold night, and you've huddled around a fire to warm your freezing hands, lifting your head to gaze up at the sky. Those countless stars, that deep darkness, that infinite vastness. And there's only one question in your mind. What is this? Who am I? And what are these lights trying to tell me? It was precisely this question that seized the minds of people across every corner of the world thousands of years ago. People whose names we mostly don't know, yet whose traces of genius we can still feel today. Without telescopes, without computers, without even a written language, they understood the sky so profoundly that even modern astronomers fall silent for hours before the calculations they left behind. So, who were these people? How did they know so much? And perhaps the most important question of all, what did they leave us as their legacy? But before we get to that question, I need to ask you something first. Have you ever truly spent a night just staring up at the sky? Far from city lights, in unpolluted darkness, on one of those rare nights when the sheer number of stars nearly makes your head spin. If you have, then you already understand why ancient people were so obsessively drawn to watching the heavens. Because that sky wasn't just beautiful. That sky was speaking. And some people decided to learn its language. Let's go to ancient Egypt first. Imagine an engineer on the banks of the Nile, beneath the blazing tropical heat. No GPS in hand, no satellite imagery, no laser leveling device. And yet he is building the Great Pyramid of Giza, and its four corners align almost perfectly to the north, south, east, and west. The margin of error is just 0.05 degrees. Even with the most advanced construction technology available today, achieving this would be considered a great feat of engineering. But how did they manage it? They used the stars. We know that the ancient Egyptians saw the sky as a calendar, a guide, a map of the gods. The three stars of Orion's belt align precisely with the layout of the Great Pyramids. Some researchers explain this as coincidence, while others search for a much deeper meaning. But think about this. If it really is a coincidence, how is it that across thousands of years, on different continents, civilizations with no knowledge of each other held the same stars sacred, made the same alignments, and calculated the same cycles? A coincidence happens once, twice, and it draws attention. But when it repeats over and over again across different cultures, across different centuries, then perhaps this is a language. And those who first learned that language may have belonged to a civilization far older than we ever imagined. But the story doesn't end here, because now our journey takes us to a far more mysterious place, the plains of Mesopotamia. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, approximately 5,000 years ago, lived a people called the Sumerians, and these people knew things. In the writings they carved onto clay tablets, they spoke of planets, star clusters, and the movements of celestial bodies. But here's what's striking. Their astronomical records were so accurate that some modern researchers still cannot explain where this knowledge came from. They had calculated the 8-year cycle of Venus. They could predict lunar eclipses in advance. And that's not all. Some tablets contain references to inner planets that today we can only see with very powerful telescopes. How is this possible? Did they discover it themselves, or did they inherit it? And if they inherited it, from whom? Did you know that some Sumerian tablets speak of mysterious beings, wise creatures who descended from the sky? Mainstream history classifies these accounts as myth, but some researchers are asking a different question. What if, in the earliest periods of human history, there is a transfer of knowledge that we have never been able to document. We don't know the answer to that question, but asking it helps us understand just how deep history truly goes. And that question brings me face to face with an even older mystery. In the southeast of Turkey, there is a hill called Göbekli Tepe, built approximately 12,000 years ago and filled with massive stone pillars. The archaeologists who discovered it at first could not believe what they were seeing, because history books told us this. 12,000 years ago, humanity was still in the hunter-gatherer stage, not organized enough to construct permanent structures. But Göbekli Tepe changed everything. This structure shows that the people of that era had a far more complex social organization and a far deeper knowledge of the sky than we ever assumed. Moreover, some researchers suggest that the arrangement of the pillars aligns with specific star clusters. But there is something even more intriguing. At a certain point, this structure was deliberately buried underground. Who buried it? Why? As if someone wanted to preserve this knowledge, or perhaps erase it. And this question leads me every single time to the same thought. History is far more complicated than we know, and the things we don't know are perhaps far greater than the things we do. Now our journey takes us to the middle of the ocean, to the small islands lost in the blue waters of the Pacific. Polynesia. Without a single instrument, navigating only by the stars, the wind, the movement of waves, and the flight of birds, Polynesian sailors traveled thousands of kilometers across open sea. This great saga of migration, stretching from Hawaii to New Zealand, from Easter Island to Tahiti, is a breathtaking achievement even by modern maritime standards. But how did they do it? Their observatory was the sky itself. They knew by heart the seasonal positions of specific star clusters. They knew which star rose due east in the early hours of the morning, and which one pointed due north. And they passed this knowledge down from generation to generation through oral tradition, through songs, through dance, through stories told around a fire. Just like the way I'm telling you this story right now. Think about it. A canoe making its way across the vast ocean, weeks without sight of land. On board, a few families, animals, seeds. And the only thing guiding them? The stars above their heads. This is not merely a navigation technique. This is a reflection of humanity's deepest and most personal relationship with the universe. And that relationship was not built in a single night. It was passed down across generations, around a fire, in a moment just like the one you find yourself in right now. But what about the mysterious highlands of South America? You've probably heard of the Nazca lines in Peru. Enormous figures carved into the desert floor, visible only from the air. There's a fish, a monkey, a spider, and between them run long, straight lines, almost like runways. Who were these lines made for? Did someone who could fly need to see them? Many researchers have wrestled with this question, and many theories have been put forward. Mainstream archaeology suggests the lines were ritualistic in purpose or marked routes to water sources. But some alternative theorists go further, claiming they point to specific star clusters in the sky. One research team using satellite imagery and astronomical software found that some of the lines align with specific star rising points. Is that definitive proof? No. But it's not a finding that can simply be dismissed either. Perhaps Nazca was a star map written on the ground. Perhaps it was a calendar. Or perhaps it was something we've never even thought of. And that ambiguity, that open door, is what I find most beautiful about history. Every definitive answer closes a door. But every good question opens hundreds of new ones. Now stop for a moment and think. The star alignments in Egypt, the planetary calculations of Mesopotamia, the observation pillars at Göbekli Tepe, the stellar navigation of Polynesia, the mysterious lines of Nazca. Can all of these really be separate coincidences? Or were all of these civilizations asking the same great question, searching for the same great answer? And if so, who asked that question first? I can't give you a complete answer to that question tonight, but I can draw you into it. And sometimes being inside a question takes you somewhere far richer than knowing an answer ever could. Now our journey takes us south, deep into Africa. In the savanna lands of Zimbabwe, in the Limpopo Valley, an observation site dating back approximately 3,000 years was discovered. Known as Adam's Calendar, this place consists of great stone pillars, and their alignment points to the solstices and equinoxes. The sunlight is observed to fall on these rocks at exactly specific angles on exactly specific days. This is a calendar. But why? For whom? These are important questions to ask because Africa in our history books has too often been portrayed as the home of primitivity rather than civilization. Yet what lies hidden in these lands, in these stones, in these alignments, may be the traces of humanity's oldest and deepest astronomical tradition. Some researchers claim that Adam's calendar may be as much as 75,000 years old. If that's true, it would be the oldest known man-made structure on Earth. And if it really is that old, then 75,000 years ago, a human being looked up at the sky, arranged stones, and tried to measure the movement of the sun. This shows us that human curiosity is an evolutionary necessity. Understanding the sky seems to be not merely a practical need, but an existential one. Africa may well be the continent where humanity first looked up at the stars. And to recognize that, we need to redraw the map in our minds. When we turn eastward, we encounter an entirely different world. In the Rajasthan desert of northwestern India stands the Jantar Mantar Observatory, built in the 18th century by a Maharaja, yet embodying a wisdom far more ancient. This structure is not a building, it is an instrument. Enormous sundials, moon tracking systems, and star alignment tools, all built entirely from stone and lime. And these instruments were so precise they could measure time accurately to within 2 seconds. But here's what makes it even more interesting. At the time this observatory was designed, European astronomers were using far more advanced metallic instruments. In other words, the Indian astronomers had deliberately chosen stone. Why? Perhaps they trusted in the permanence of stone. Perhaps they believed that knowledge needed to live not just on paper or in memory, but in structures and in spaces. And they were right. Jantar Mantar still stands today. The majority of the metallic instruments used during that same era have long since rusted, been stolen, or been lost. Stone outlasted time. And perhaps that was the greatest secret of the ancient astronomers. Not how they acquired their knowledge, but knowing how to preserve it. When we move to China, we encounter what is perhaps the most systematic record of the sky in all of history. Over thousands of years, Chinese astronomers meticulously documented supernova explosions, comets, and sunspots from the earliest periods of recorded history. The supernova explosion of 1054 AD, now known as the Crab Nebula, was recorded by Chinese observers, and that record is still used in scientific research today. Think about it. 1,000 years ago, a human being saw a sudden brightness in the sky, carefully noted it down, and those notes are today shedding light on the work of 21st century astronomers. But China's astronomical legacy doesn't stop there. Chinese astronomers also read the sky as a political map. Certain celestial movements were believed to influence the fate of the empire. The appearance of a comet could be taken as a sign that a dynasty was coming to its end. This tells us something profound. Ancient astronomers did not see the sky merely as a physical entity, but as a message system carrying meaning. And perhaps hidden in that perspective is a wisdom that modern science has been too quick to dismiss. And now our journey takes us to the dense jungles of Central America, to the very heartbeat of the Maya civilization. The Maya are perhaps the civilization that developed the most advanced calendar system in all of history. Their astronomical calculations were so accurate that they determined the orbital cycle of Venus to within just 2 seconds of modern calculations. 2 seconds. Without telescopes, without computers. Using only observation, patience, and wisdom accumulated over generations. Many Maya temples were built to align with specific astronomical events. At Chichen Itza, the El Castillo Pyramid creates a remarkable shadow play on its steps at sunset during the spring equinox, as if a serpent is descending. This is not a coincidence. This is an extraordinary design intelligence that fused the sky with architecture. But perhaps the Maya's greatest legacy is not these structures at all. Their greatest legacy is the questions they dared to ask. What is time? Does it have a beginning? Does it have an end? And if it moves in cycles, what are those cycles telling us? When the Maya calendar ended in 2012, it caused widespread panic in the modern world. But the Maya never said the world would end. What they said was that a great cycle was closing and a new one was beginning, just as every star in the sky moves within its own cycle. And this leads us to a very deep question. If time is cyclical, will the wisdom of past civilizations one day return? And perhaps that wisdom has already returned and we simply haven't noticed yet. Now I'm taking you somewhere very different. To the north of Europe, among the green hills and misty plains, to England. You've surely heard of Stonehenge. Those massive stone blocks standing upright on Salisbury Plain weighing tons upon tons. But what most people don't know is this. Some of these stones were brought from Wales, approximately 250 kilometers away. 250 kilometers. Without heavy machinery, without roads, without wheeled vehicles. So why did they carry stones from so far away? Why didn't they use stones from closer by? Researchers still cannot fully answer that question, but what is known is that Stonehenge was an observatory. At the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the central stone. At the winter solstice, it sets in exactly the opposite direction. This cannot be a coincidence. Stonehenge was a calendar built of stone, an observatory, and perhaps a ritual space as well. And the people who built it were people whose names we will never know. People who left no writing behind, but who carved meaning into stone. Stone was their language, and that language is still speaking today. When we cross to Ireland, we encounter a structure that is even older and perhaps even more breathtaking. Newgrange. Built approximately 5,000 years ago, this stone mound does something extraordinary at the winter solstice. On the morning of that day, as the sun rises, its rays slip through a narrow opening at the entrance of the structure and illuminate the long corridor, flooding the innermost chamber with a golden light for 17 minutes, only on that day. Only for those 17 minutes. For the rest of the year, the corridor remains in darkness. To build this structure, you would have needed to know the exact angle of the sun on that specific day, and to calculate that 5,000 years ago without the tools we have today seems almost impossible. And yet they did it. And this structure still works today. It still draws in the light during those 17 minutes. 5,000 years later, without faltering, without change. And that makes me wonder, how many things do we build today that will still be working 500 years from now? And now our journey approaches its final stop. But this ending is, in truth, a beginning. Because today the world's most advanced space telescope, the James Webb, is observing galaxies billions of light years away. And these observations are allowing us to reach all the way back to the birth of the universe, to the first light of the Big Bang. Think about it. Humanity has come from that first person sitting by a fire to where we are now. From counting stars with the naked eye to massive space telescopes capable of seeing the rings around distant planets. But across this entire journey, one thing has never changed: the question. What is this? Why does it exist? And where do I fit in this picture? What separates modern astronomers from ancient ones is instruments, technology, and mathematics. But what unites them is something far greater: humanity's ancient and inextinguishable curiosity. The curiosity of that person by the fire lives on today in the design of a telescope floating through space. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy the ancient astronomers left behind. They didn't leave us answers. They left us a habit: to look, to ask, to search. And you can end this night with that same habit. Close your eyes, go back 12,000 years, sit beside the still unexcavated stones of Göbekli Tepe, and lift your head. That sky is the same sky you see today, the same stars, the same cycles, the same infinity. And in that moment, the person sitting by that ancient fire felt exactly what you feel now. Both very small and impossibly vast. Small because the universe is endless. Vast because they possessed a mind capable of seeing, feeling, and beginning to understand that endlessness. And this feeling has not changed in 12,000 years. From Göbekli Tepe to Giza, from Nazca to Newgrange, from Jantar Mantar to the James Webb, across this long journey, we have always been searching for the same thing: ourselves, our place within the universe. And perhaps the greatest discovery of all is understanding that this search will never end. Because as the universe grows, so do our questions. And every question that grows brings us one step closer to our own humanity. Just like that person by the fire, just like right now, right here, together with you,